Hi everyone, I thought I'd put together another really short video just to talk to you a little bit about what we are going to do this week in terms of assignments. And now this is a relatively light week with assignments, as you can see, and so I pulled up the page for you to take a look at. Again, you've got your video lecture talking about different types of budget formats. You also have your reading from the Mikesell textbook. Provided for you a couple of videos this week as well. You have a video on here for different types of budget formats, the 4 different budget formats that we presented in the video. This is just a very quick overview of those. And then also a second video as well for those 4 different types of budget formats. And so the videos this week just kind of reinforce what we presented in the lecture for this week. In terms of assignments, again, it's a pretty light week in that you have the multimedia, your discussion board post, and in your discussion board post for this week, you're going to use the city budget that you selected back in week 1, and you're going to review that budget and then identify what type of budget format the city is using based upon our discussion of the 4 different types of budget formats and the 2 videos that are provided for you for this week. So in other words, what you'll do is you'll take a look at your budget, you'll come to a conclusion about which type of budget format you think is being used, and you'll use a minimum of 3 academic peer-reviewed journals to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of the budget format that you identified. So if you think it's a line item budget format, tell me that in your presentation, and then use at least 3 peer-reviewed journal articles to provide support for discussion of the advantages and disadvantages of line item budgeting. So you know how these things work, you've done them before, and so you'll be developing a PowerPoint presentation. After reviewing the budget you selected in week 1, obtain the journal articles, answer the following questions in this order. What type of budget format is used by the city? Consider using screenshots to demonstrate your assessment of the budget. So give us some empirical evidence. If you're saying, yeah, this is a performance-based budget, show us some examples from the budget that will support your assessment that it's a performance-based budget. How did you determine what type of budget format was being used? In other words, what type of information did you use to arrive at that answer? So if you're saying it's a zero-based budget, chances are you're going to use the budget summary or the letter of transmittal in which the city talked about the zero-based budgeting process. If you're saying it's a performance-based budget, then obviously it has some performance elements in it, some expectations, and links those expectations up to the activities, and links the activities up to the amount of money being spent on each one of those activities. And so it gives kind of that information in terms of how you arrived at your assessment of the type of budget format you think it is. And as I said before, then your third question, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of this type of budget format? And this is where you're going to be using your scholarly literature to support your answer. Be sure to list the citations for your journal articles on your slides as you discuss the advantages and disadvantages. And then finally, if you had to recommend a different budget format for the city to use, what budget format would you recommend and why? If you would recommend remaining with the current format, please explain that as well. So you're basically answering these 4 questions. What type of budget format is it? What information did you use to arrive at that answer? What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of this budget format, using literature to support your answer? And then if you had to recommend a different budget format, what different budget format would you recommend? If you think the budget format that the city is using is entirely appropriate, justify why you think that budget format is appropriate. So you will be providing a title slide, presentation overview slide, answering these questions, then end with a closing slide as you usually do. Presentation should be brief, 5 to 7 minutes, and you know the drill with putting these slides together. Then in addition to presenting that, I'm then asking that you respond to a minimum of 2 other colleagues expressing similarities and differences between the information each of you presented. So just a multimedia discussion board presentation for this week, and that's pretty much it for your assignment. So I wanted to keep the assignments light this week because I know that you're obtaining your city budget and you're analyzing the city budget, and sometimes it'll take you a little bit of time to work through that budget. Hopefully, if you find a budget that has a really good budget summary, the city will have done most of the job for you, and it'll be relatively easy for you to identify the budget format. So I look forward to reading and watching really your PowerPoint presentations for this week. As always, if you have any questions about the assignment or any information for the week, feel free to reach out with an email. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a great week, and I'll talk to you again next week.